Our first question goes, may I know, for beings in the intermediate or bardo stage, will they feel hungry? Recently, I attended a Christian wake. Their family members did not offer the deceased food and etc. Apparently, unlike in maybe some Buddhist traditions, I am concerned if the deceased who passed on recently will feel hungry. How can we offer them food? Thanks, Ajahn, for your guidance.
Well, one thing to understand, we're talking more about food for the heart, food for the mind, which is what merit is. When you do good actions, skillful actions, you generate food for the heart. Happiness, good feeling, it gives rise to good qualities. So like you're making merit now by listening to the Dhamma, discussing the Dhamma. Hopefully this helps you to gain more understanding, more knowledge. That may help you to overcome some of your own stress and sufferings. So that's a good thing. So it's the goodness that arises in your heart. And another aspect of merit is it cleanses us, cleanses the heart of negative emotions, negative thoughts and views. So this is the kind of merit the Buddha really emphasized. So if someone dies, whatever their religion or no religion, doesn't matter. If they die with a lot of suffering, attachment, which is quite common unfortunately, that follows them into their next life. If you have a connection with that person, related, close friend, relative, maybe your merit-making activities that generate this happiness and this cleansing, purifying effect on your own heart, and you dedicate that to them, it can help them. Maybe. It's difficult to prove or to know, isn't it? Because you can't see, most people can't see or be sure about this. But taking the words of wise teachers, the Buddha, enlightened teachers, we do this practice. But there's so many ways to make merit. Making merit through material gifts, alms giving to Buddhist monks is considered very powerful good merit, but any kind of charity, helping the sick, the poor, someone in need, animals. There's so many ways you can make merit through alms giving or charity, generosity, and dedicating it to the dead. Listening to the Dhamma, as I said, is making merit. Meditating, making merit. Chanting, reciting the words of the Buddha is making merit. Keeping precepts is making merit. There's so many ways we can make merit. That's what we're really aiming at, is both improving your own state of mind, learning, bringing up skillful, wholesome Dhammas, and then dedicating that to the one who's passed away. So generally, if you're Buddhist, you probably believe the highest merit is Sangha and making offerings to the Sangha, listening to the Dhamma, meditating with the Sangha. So that's what Buddhists do at funerals. We invite monks to receive a meal, we make offerings, we listen to Dhamma talks, we listen to chanting. And we may do that many times. And we also do acts of charity. We build things that are useful for temples and monasteries, or sometimes just out in wider society as well. People like to sponsor Dhamma projects in the name of the dead and dedicate it to someone who's passed away. So all of this is what we call merit making, but it's what we call generating good feeling, or the food for the heart, the food for the mind. And that's what the dead may benefit from. Even if they don't, or you doubt about that, you benefit, and the people around you, the living, benefit from it. There's no doubt about that. So that's why we do it. Other traditions, other religions, other traditions may remember the dead in different ways and have different rituals. Some of them have a certain similarity to Buddhism, some don't. It's up to them. What we tend to do nowadays, though, we're all becoming very kind of sensual and half-hearted about things. Even Buddhists are the same. And so, we're more interested in, the flower arrangements or what kind of food is presented at the wake. I don't mean for the dead, I mean just for the living. What kind of entertainments, you hear people say this, oh, it was a really good funeral. You say, why was it a really good funeral? Oh, the food was really good. Or there was some entertainment, or the flower arrangement cost a lot of money, or the costume, the people, the clothes they were wearing. These more superficial, materialistic things are not merit so much as the actual development of the mind in the path of sila, samadhi, panya, developing good qualities of mind. That's the real merit making. So I would emphasize that for helping the dead. You make some real merit for them and for yourself, obviously.
Sadhu. Next question or comment. When I meditate, my mind becomes peaceful, but it is not concentrated. The body is relaxed, but my mind still has thoughts in the background. Any comments from Luang Por?
Well, I think most people begin their meditation and they might experience that too. That's very common. The important thing is to develop more sati sampajanya, mindfulness, clear comprehension, put effort into that. And it will tend to calm you down, relax you bodily, physically, as well as mentally. But at first you'll still have thoughts bubbling up, coming into your consciousness. But if you're putting effort into being mindful of an object, knowing an object, then those thoughts won't bother you too much. After your mindfulness becomes stronger, more continuous, the thoughts will come and go, but you can see that they're just thoughts. They're just feelings, sensations, thoughts. Because you're now putting your attention on a certain meditation object. So a very good thing to experience in meditation is when your mindfulness becomes very calm and continuous, you experience what we call upajjhara samadhi, where the mind is no longer distracted by thoughts, but thoughts still arise. You may still hear a sound or feel pain in the body maybe, but it doesn't bother you because you have enough mindfulness to contemplate. So you can contemplate when the mind is like that. So it's a very useful thing to experience. You can experience some detached awareness where you're mindful enough, calm enough, steady enough in your mind, but you can also see the arising and ceasing of phenomena, physical phenomena and say feelings associated with the body, sounds, sights, but also you can contemplate your own thoughts and memories internally as well, because you see them arising, passing away, you know them as impermanent. That's what you're aiming for, I'd say. If you can bring your mind to a deeper state of concentration, all the better, but let's just take it one step at a time.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question. Dear Ajahn Kalyano, will you be able to share with us the types of karma upon one's death? How can one be of help to oneself when they are dying in a painful state? Will reciting Buddha and recollection of virtues of the Triple Gem and one's own good deeds be of help to reduce the physical bodily pain?
Well, in simple terms, we have kusala karma and akusala karma, wholesome karma and unwholesome, just in the simplest form. Obviously, the Buddha did explain karma more elaborately than that, but for simple practical terms, maybe that's enough to know your thoughts and mental states rooted in greed, anger and delusion, unwholesome karma, and mental states rooted in non-greed, non-anger, non-delusion, wholesome karma. Your aim is to always develop the wholesome and abandon the unwholesome to the last moment of your life. And of course, at the end of your life, it's a bit more challenging in most situations, because you tend to be maybe old, maybe weak, maybe ill, maybe in pain. It's harder. So the best thing is start early. Get into the good habit of abandoning the unwholesome right here, right now, because you never know when death will come, and you might as well get ready now. Abandon the unwholesome now, cultivate the wholesome now, until whenever the day comes when it's your last day. That would be the best thing. Of course, everyone's always worried, oh, if I die with an unwholesome state of mind, what happens after I die? Where will I be reborn? In a bad place? Well, yeah, maybe. That's why I say practice now. Get into the habit of practicing now, get into the good habit, and this good habit will help you right to the end of your life. Some forms of karma come up very strongly at the end of our life. Unresolved business, particularly aversion you're attaching to with other people, greed for possessions, wealth, property, and people, delusions and just confusion, fear, anxiety. All of this, I think, makes sense to most people. As you get older, your mind, if you're not careful, it tends to get a bit weaker. Your memory starts to go. It's harder to train. So the best thing is start practicing now when you're young. If you're young enough to be listening to this session, use this as your inspiration. Get practicing mindfulness every day. Keep the precepts, practice compassion, be patient and restrained with your own negative emotions that may cloud your thinking or lead you to do unskillful things. Start doing this today, and work with the meditation object so that you have something that you can really use maybe at the end of your life, whenever that comes. So something like Buddho, reciting Buddho is certainly a good one. The breath is another good one, using the breath as a meditation object to keep mindful, keep your mind in a wholesome state. And as you say, recollecting the good things you've done in your life can also be a way to uplift your mind at the end of your life. It makes you feel like your life was something worthwhile. So there's a number of different wholesome objects you could go to if you were facing the end of your life. But train in that, practice that, because it's not necessarily you can just say, oh, I'll think of the good stuff. You just tell yourself that, and I'll do it on the last day of my life, because you don't know when the last day of your life is going to come, at what moment and how you'll die and where you'll be. You don't know. So practice now. A wise person practices now, here and now, gets going, start now. And we can practice now. You don't have to wait for anything. You don't need equipment or some special conditions. You can practice mindfulness even if you have a lot of responsibilities, family, work, all kinds of things, or you have obstacles like health. Don't give in to them. Start practicing now. Get ready for that last moment of your life, right now.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Luang Por, is it or is it not a worthwhile endeavour to consider what was the source of good or bad karma in the past?
Only if you can remember, whether we're talking about this life or even past lives, only if you can remember is it really useful. You can make general reflections, have general reflections maybe, and say, well, I've probably done this in the past. I've probably been rude to people. I've probably killed some animals. I've probably done this. I've probably been lazy. I've probably ate too much, slept too much, did stupid things, whatever. And we've probably also done some good stuff as well. I've probably done some meditation before. I've probably listened to the Dhamma before. I've probably helped people before. But the thing is, if you can't remember, it's speculation. So you have to know or be mindful that you're speculating. So it's a general reflection. But in this life, you can remember. You can remember past instances of good and bad conduct, good and bad karma. And occasionally you can see how it's led on to other things, good and bad. So if you genuinely can remember something and you can see the causal process, well, that can be quite useful. You learn some lessons. What was good and worked well, and what was bad and led to more suffering, you can learn from that. Other times you just have to have a more general approach. And if you have some accident, you don't know what's led up to it from the past life or anything like that. You just can't remember. But maybe in the present moment you can reflect, oh, I was careless, I wasn't paying attention, so I slipped over and broke my leg or something. You may learn lessons in the present very easily, very quickly. As far as past life, lessons from past life or past actions, it can only be a more general thing unless you can specifically remember. And particularly people who meditate, sometimes they do have visions of past karma coming up, good and bad, what's led to what. Even then it's just a vision, isn't it? It's just an image, a vision, a kind of a storyline that comes into your meditation. But because you haven't asked for that or looked for that, it's just arisen out of the peaceful mind. Well, sometimes it can be useful to you, give you some special knowledge about yourself, or sometimes even about other people. It does happen. But if you don't remember, you don't know, you don't have any insights, I wouldn't waste too much time speculating, because that's all you can do. It's guessing, isn't it? I would look more in the present day and the karma you're making right here, right now, day by day, and learn what is wholesome and leads to good results, pleasant results, skillful results, what is unwholesome karma and leads to bad results. Learn from that as you go.
Sadhu Lumpu. Next question. How do we let go and put down words of praise and criticism, practically speaking? How to let go of grasping and attachment to these words? Are there some train of thoughts or practice to cut the grasping and put down these words on the spot? Thank you.
I think the Buddha said if you're criticized in the city, then you leave the city, leave the criticism there, or insulted. Or if you're praised, leave the praise there. So you move out of the city, and everyone travels a lot these days. Leave it there. So wherever you are in the world, or if say you go to work and you're criticized at work or you're praised at work, they hurl lots of superlatives at you and tell you you're really great. Okay, you receive it there and then you leave it there. When you go home, just leave it behind. So as you move location, or if you're in your home and your spouse insults you, well, they're insulting you in one room. As you move into another room, just leave the insult behind in the first room and go to a new room and, you're free. Literally, you can do that, can't you? You don't make a big deal out of it. Don't hold on to it. It's just words. Don't carve them into stone and carry them around with you, this heavy weight. They said this, they said that. Because you just suffer, don't you? Put it down, let it go. You reflect on it, and when you're mindful, you can do that. It's not that you don't know what's happened. You know what's happened, what's been said. You know the meaning, you reflect on the meaning, but then with mindfulness, you move on and let it go. You don't carry around that memory. If the memory comes up again, you let it go again and again and again until it doesn't bother you anymore. You have to learn that. It's a skill, and that's one of the things you're learning in meditation. But as a practical reflection, leave the praise or the insult where it happened. They insult you on the street, you get into a taxi and the taxi driver is really rude to you, or you're the taxi driver and the passenger is really rude to you, leave it there and move on. I was once invited to go into an ambulance when someone was dying. And they said, because, this is the paramedics on the ambulance, they said, because we don't want this person to die and then the ghost to just be hanging around on the ambulance. Can you bless them so that they die and then they go off and be born someone else? So even at the end of their life, you don't want someone hanging around as a ghost, do you? You want them to be reborn in a good place. It's the same with your experiences in daily life. You don't want to hang on to this miserable experience of being insulted. You know, it's happened, you can't change that. But don't carry it around like a ghost in your mind from room to room, place to place, week by week, year by year. You're just suffering. So put it down mindfully, skillfully.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question. Hi, Ajahn. I've heard that sitting for long periods, even for more than 10 minutes, can be harmful to spinal health. Could I seek Ajahn's advice? Is there any way that I can meditate without sitting for too long?
Well, I'm a good example of someone who's really not very supple or physically fit or particularly kind of, athletic. But I learned to sit for long periods without any trouble to my spine at all. I've never had any big problem with my spine from sitting meditation. I've had problems with my spine and muscles and things from lifting heavy objects, but not from meditation. In meditation, I lift heavy objects with my mindfulness. I lift them out of my mind and set them down. Then I'm free and happy. So you do heavy lifting in meditation, but it's never bothered my spine. I do have problems now with my legs, muscles and knees over all these years of meditating, because I've been meditating for 45 years, so I'm not surprised by that. And I just manage that. But I've learned to sit without moving sometimes for, 6 or 7 hours occasionally. Not too often, it's quite painful, but you still do it sometimes. Of course, if you have a particular issue with your health, whether it's your spine, your leg, anything, you have to make adjustments for that. Some people sit on chairs, so you don't have to sit on the floor. You can sit on a chair, because I'm sure you're sitting on chairs anyway. I mean, you live 24 hours a day. You're not always lying down, or even if you are lying down, you can meditate lying down. If you can sit on a chair and eat food or watch a TV program or sit in front of a computer, you can also sit on a chair and meditate. And no one says, oh, it's spinal problem sitting, eating food or watching your favorite program on a computer. Maybe there's part of the mind is just finding excuses. So of course we have to manage our body, look after our body, be kind to our body, but at the same time be careful of those excuses that just are kind of obstructing you from doing something very good for yourself. So see what you can do, see how long you can sit, and most people start with small periods of time and work up from there. So you start 5, 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, and just see how you go. But there's nothing that the Buddha didn't say we have to hurt our body or damage our body or our health through this practice. So we just learn what we can do, and you'll notice as your mindfulness improves, your mind becomes calm, more peaceful, then you can do more.
Sadhu. Another question. I have come across the phrase 4 pairs of persons, 8 kinds of individuals in some suttas. Could Ajahn please explain what this means? Thank you.
The 4 noble ones, or eight noble ones, The Buddha helped us in our practice. We're starting from a place, we say, of unenlightenment. That's why we suffer, that's why we're here, and we all experience suffering from time to time in our life. If you're saying you never suffer, then you haven't observed yourself very closely, I'd say. So we're starting from a place of unenlightenment, ignorance, not knowing the truth. Our goal is Nibbana, freedom from suffering, freedom from the round of birth and death, freedom from attachment, etc. That's our goal. And the Buddha helped that in the progress towards that goal, there are certain milestones that you pass, you might say. The development of the human mind along this path, the Noble Eightfold Path that we develop, there are certain points that you can measure and say certain things have changed. So we get these 4, you might say, stages or levels of enlightenment. There's, first of all, stream entry. The stream enterer, there's certain characteristics of the stream enterer, the first level of enlightenment, that have changed. They now have unshakable faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. They keep the 5 precepts. They understand the difference between wholesome and unwholesome dhammas, and they practice accordingly. And they're not stingy, etc. You know, there's ways we describe the mind of a Sotapanna as different from the mind of the unenlightened, untrained human being. And then the next level of enlightenment, there's the Sakatagami, once returner. So Sotapanna will have a maximum of 7 more lifetimes. Once returner obviously has a maximum of 1 more lifetime. And their defilements are reduced a bit more, greed, anger, reduced a bit more. Then the next level of enlightenment, Anagami, they call them non-returner. They're never born as a human being again, but they may be reborn, if they're not enlightened yet, they may be reborn in the Brahma realms. And then the Arahant, never reborn again, no more suffering, no more attachment. So 4 levels of enlightened beings. And then you can expand that to 8, because there's the one on the path to stream entry and the one who's experienced the fruit of stream entry. So it's like described as 2 different people, even though it may be the mind of one person, but it's just at different moments in time, different snapshots of the mind as it develops. You're on the path and then you get to your destination, so your mind changes. So that happens for each level. There's one on the path of once returner, one, and then the fruit of once returner, one on the path of non-returner, and then on the fruit of non-returner, and then one on the path of fully enlightened Arahant, and then the one who's receiving the fruits of that, Nibbana. It could all be one person. These 4 stages of enlightenment are all one person as well, but it just depends where they're at. So some people take experiencing these paths and fruits over a number of lifetimes. Some may be all in one lifetime. The important thing is we're not there yet. We're still unenlightened. We still have to practice. Keep going.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, is it true that when one has passed away, it's best not to touch the deceased body for about 8 hours, as the consciousness may not have left the body yet? Hence, embalming of the body isn't necessary for a practitioner, as the body will be cremated anyway. Embalming is more like a closure for the family. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, I don't think there's actually one correct thing here. It depends on your culture, traditions. The important thing is to treat the person who's just died with love and respect, number 1. Love, respect, compassion. So we have different ways of showing that. So one way people show respect is not touching the body or doing anything to the body. But in some traditions, say like in Thai Buddhist tradition, we say bathe the body. So the body is there, it's dressed, it's bathed, washed, cleaned, dressed, whether it's a monastic or a lay person. And then other people may come by, family members, or if it's a monk, students and disciples come by and they bathe the body and maybe just symbolically bathe the hand of the dead body. There's certain things we do which show love, gratitude, appreciation, respect to the one who's passed away. I know in the Chinese tradition there's this thing about not touching the body for 8 hours. Well, if you're only bathing or dressing or cleaning up a body, I can't see that really will hurt the consciousness or be any problem. Where there's a lot of doubt now is removing organs for organ donation, which has to be done immediately. Someone's dying and then they quickly remove them, and people are worried that somehow this is bad karma or hurting the person. But the whole thing is, if someone's dead, they're dead. They don't feel anymore. If they've given permission for organs to be removed, which nowadays it's a very kind of legal thing, isn't it? You sign forms and you can say, I want this to happen. Where's dana? So you're probably quite happy for these organs to be removed and put into another person to help give them life. So I'm not sure it's really that much of a problem, other than all our views and opinions and arguments that we get into, and people do get into arguments. Best thing, I guess, is write down a will of what you want done with your body, what you're happy with. Even then it's no guarantee, because the whole point is when you're dead you can't control other people. So I would also suggest doing a lot of letting go while you're alive and accepting, once I'm gone, there's nothing I can do. Even with instructions, people don't always follow your instructions, so don't make a big cause of suffering out of it. But try to treat the dead as you do the living, with kindness, respect. If you have certain rituals that you want to adhere to, well, fine. If it's an agreement, the family, friends, everyone's in agreement, well, do it. It always surprises me the way people get very angry and argue over the way to treat dead bodies. There's a lot of disputes and bad feeling around it. It's very, it's a shame, isn't it? It's a time to make merit and to remember the person who's died in a good way. And rituals can help with that. So these different rituals for bathing, embalming bodies can be quite useful for the living to come together and pay their last respects. But I would agree, within your group, what you want to do, or the individual who, before they die, if they can express what they want done with their body. That will help. And try to minimize the disputes, the arguments, the bad feelings.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question. Dear Ajahn, if a family member passes away very sad, what has happened and how can we help? Sadhu.
Well, it's very common for people to be sad at the end of their life because they're leaving everything they love and like. Their family, friends, places and experiences they've had. There's a separation through death, isn't it? You don't use this body anymore after death. You don't see anything with it. You don't hear anything with it, taste anything with it. So it's the most kind of obvious kind of separation for a human being to face, death. So there's a challenge there. So for many people it brings up sadness at leaving what they're used to and what they love and like, which is why we make merit through our life. We make merit through doing good deeds, good actions, meditating, listening to Dhamma, developing the right view. This will help us face the fact that we have to separate from everything we love and like through death. It will help. So they say someone with merit, with a wholesome, good state of mind, won't fear death, won't fear the afterlife because their mind is in a good state. They have a sense of self-confidence, happiness that carries them through. So the more you practice the Dhamma, the more it should prepare you for death in a skillful way. It will help. But if someone is sad, maybe they didn't make much merit or do much good in their life, we'll try to encourage them in the best way you can to reflect on wholesome, good things, to see the value of their life, to remember good actions they've done. Or if they passed away already, well, make merit and dedicate it to them. Sometimes people have dreams or visions of their family members who've died and are sad or suffering, so you can make merit for them in their name. And Buddhists will do this. They'll make offerings to Sangha, do all kinds of skillful things and dedicate it to the dead. And that's about as much as we can do, isn't it, for the living? We make merit and we offer it or dedicate it to the dead.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, is it true that karmic debtors will harass a person nearing death in order to pull them into lower realms of existence? Thank you, Ajahn.
Sounds plausible, doesn't it? I think the worst thing is our own negative states of mind. If you've made a lot of bad karma, it follows you, doesn't it? You have regrets, you have guilt, you have memories of what you've said and done, and it comes up. That's probably your biggest obstacle to deal with. That's why it's worth learning to meditate, worth keeping precepts, worth practicing kindness and compassion through your life, so you can cope with all this negativity that may bubble up as you're at the end of your life. It's probably true, isn't it? If there is such a thing as this life, next life, past life, then it's quite possible in the past we've hurt other people through our speech and actions. Maybe even in this life you've killed animals, fish, whatever in an earlier part of your life. It's quite possible, isn't it? So that can be a cause for regret, suffering in people's minds when they think of the other beings they've harmed. If you have an argument with someone, how do you feel after? That's one of the useful things of meditation. It sort of exposes your mistakes and when you don't keep precepts. So say you have an argument with someone, you get really angry and hurl a few insults at them, then go and sit down and meditate. Can you meditate after that? Very difficult, isn't it? Well, if you lived your life like that, it's going to be very difficult to die peacefully. That's the truth of it, isn't it? So don't wait to the end of your life. Learn to restrain your actions, your speech now. Then your mind will be free and easy now right till the end of your life. This is what we're learning as we practice. And you don't need to really go back into past lives or worry about future lives. You just observe from this life what's going on. If you have arguments and fights and do unpleasant, unkind, cruel things, you don't feel good about it. It doesn't make your mind peaceful. So don't be surprised when this comes up at the end of your life.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question. Dear Ajahn, thanks for your guidance towards end-of-life planning. I plan to have a mini sitting session during my funeral. Have you seen any of this type of funeral before? Also, may I know, or maybe we'll start with that first question first.
Yeah. I've meditated at funerals, and many monks do not just chanting, but we lead people in a loving kindness meditation to help them calm down, in sharing of merits, meditation as well. For Ajahn Chah, when he died, that led to monks meditating next to his coffin for 24 hours a day for a whole year. So it led to a lot of meditation. So you definitely can incorporate that into part of the funeral program.
Sadhu. Also, may I know if it's all right for a practitioner to have their ashes be scattered into the sea? will it make the deceased feel cold? I heard this saying from the Mahayana tradition. I wonder how true it is. Thanks, Ajahn, for your tireless teaching today.
Yes, all these kind of beliefs and things people attach to, these ideas about next life. In Thailand, they have this view: if you don't offer the food you like to monks, then when you're reborn next life in heaven, you'll never get the food you like. Or if you don't offer water to monks, next life, even if you get to heaven, you'll be thirsty. So similarly, maybe if you just throw someone's ashes in the sea, they'll feel cold. But this is all speculation about next life. I would work on this life. Try not to be a cold-hearted person this life by being kind. If you practice metta and karuna, kindness, compassion, your mind gets warmer and brighter. That's probably good enough for this life. You just keep doing it this life, and then when you die, it doesn't matter where they put your ashes, because your ashes will fall in a good place because of all this warmth and good karma and good positive energy you've generated in this life. It doesn't matter so much, what happens to your ashes. I'm sure your family or relatives or friends will sort out a nice place for your ashes to go. So just focusing on developing what we call the Brahma Viharas: kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. That should cover all eventualities.
Sadhu Luang Por. Are there any more questions from anyone?
Well, it's probably quite a lot for tonight. We don't want to overload you, so maybe we'll leave it there and we'll end the session. Thank you for listening, and we wish you all well in your Dhamma practice. Next week's session will be from the Buddha Dhamma Foundation. I'll be giving a talk through them in Singapore, but at more or less the same time, I believe.